Hello and welcome to Slide Reviews. So today we are going back to our GU series to go over some bladder lesions. And we just have our standard disclaimer at the beginning here. And as always with our challenge cases, we're not going to go over the lecture material because you already have access to that. But we have 12 cases to go over for our challenges. So let's get started. Case 1. So what we notice is it looks relatively bland, right? Not a whole heck of a lot going on here. It doesn't even look like we necessarily have epithelium all the way on this piece. So maybe we'll take a look at this piece first. And what we see here are nice von Brunn's nests. We have normal appearing epithelium up here. And here what we have is our cystitis glandularis. We can see the columnar type epithelium, and it's also slit-like. So remember cystitis cystica, aglandularis. Let's see if there's anything else interesting going on in this though. But just note how bland the stroma is. This is all cauterized here, and this looks normal. It's just kind of pulled off. Okay. And we're kind of seeing the same thing over here. So we have this urothelial epithelium, and then this columnar type epithelium up here. So here is your cystitis glandularis over here as well. Okay, so that's case 1. Case 2, it doesn't actually look like maybe we have any urothelium here. Don't see any blue. It all looks really pink. So let's just go down. Okay. So what we see here is we have urothelium, lots and lots of eosinophils. Remember, eosinophils have really pink-red granules and that bilobe nucleus that kind of looks like headphones, or like the granularity almost gives it like a disco ball type appearance, but they're extremely red. And lots and lots of eosinophils. And this is actually the pathology. So this is actually something that we saw in lecture. You can make out some of the organs here. And just that sea of eosinophils. So eosinophils in the bladder should always raise your suspicion of parasites. And that is indeed what we're looking at here. Don't think we have any good spikes to look at, but that's okay. Because remember, even if you have spikes, which they're supposed to be terminal spikes for this entity, it's really difficult to assess that on H&E. So remember your culture, whether they're doing that via traditional culture or most institutions now will be using a MALDI-TOF, like mass spec, all that kind of stuff. But this is schistosomiasis hematobium. Okay, so remember association with squamous cell carcinoma in the bladder, and these patients would have frank hematuria. Case 3, so we definitely have some urothelium here. Looks like maybe there's potential for ulceration here with all the blood. And this looks kind of funny here too. This is a lymph node, and I can tell that even at this power. So, okay, so they took out this bladder because we can see full thickness, right? So our muscularis propria, and you can see the 2 layers of the muscle, and then we have our fat here. So even though you can have fat in all layers of your bladder, seeing this is a full cross section. Okay. And looking at our urothelium, there's some inflammation, maybe a little bit of disarray. Oh, okay. So this is what I'm trying to show here. So this is one aspect of this case. So these are, looks like calcified eggs. Okay, and again, this is schistosomiasis. And we do have some atypia. Okay, getting to be quite a bit of atypia, actually. And this is why we're starting to, so this is squamous metaplasia. Is it invasive? Looks pretty irregular around here. And so much retraction artifact, which the bladder tends to have a lot of retraction artifact with invasive lesions, and I just don't like how some of these areas are angulated. So this case is a lot more interesting than at first it appears, because this is schistosomiasis hematobium with an associated invasive squamous cell carcinoma, which appears to be well differentiated. So again, here, so you can see it in that low power, here are your calcified eggs. Okay. Very interesting case. So case 3, schistosomiasis, squamous cell carcinoma. Very cool. Case 4, so this immediately looks very different from what we've seen in the other cases. It's extremely blue. We do have some cystic areas as well. So let's just see what we have on higher power. All right. And so here we have our peripheral palisading. We have endophytic growth, which means like it's growing down instead of out. And most of these are more of a trabecular type pattern. There is some expansion where it appears more nested. And some atypia, but the orientation is difficult to tell where these cells actually are. But as at a minimum, this is an inverted urothelial papilloma. This inverted pattern. And remember, you can see the inverted pattern with carcinomas, so you want to also make sure you're spending some time looking for those. Okay. And again, this one is very similar in appearance at low power to our previous case. Here we can see some of the expansion between the trabeculae. So this clues you in right away that you have an inverted growth pattern. But we just want to spend a little bit of time, like we did on the last one, just kind of zooming around, trying to get a feel for the lesion, see if we have any surface epithelium. These areas are extremely dense. And why are we looking for surface epithelium? Well, surface epithelium in your inverted papillomas should be bland. It should be normal, and if this is surface, this is not completely bland. There is some disarray here. There is atypia. The slam dunk would be having atypical mitotic figures that are high up, but this is too much atypia. So even though you can allow for some atypia within inverted papillomas, and you do not count the atypia seen within your umbrella cells if that is present, this is actual disarray. So for here, I would say, like, is this, my differential would be non-invasive urothelial carcinoma low grade with an inverted pattern versus an inverted urothelial papilloma. Why favor the former over the latter? Well, again, the disarray is a bit much. So this is a case that I would like to show to somebody, not one that I would just want to look at myself. Just kind of get a sense of what they think about the amount of atypia and sense of the case. This is case 6. So again, we see like these huge expansile areas that are very purple, very blue. It almost has, like at low power, like a phylloides type look with these very slit-like spaces, or fibroadenomatous type look, but we are in bladder, not breast. And if we go down, again, here is that basal layer, that peripheral palisade. Now, even though it's expanded, I feel like this is still very, very nice, like very well defined. There's a little bit of pleomorphism. And I think with this case, I did. So I had spent some time looking at this case, so I annotated some mitotic figures. Don't remember how many I annotated though. But again, we see that there's some pleomorphism, there's some hyperchromasia seen, and this is non-basal. So non-basal, had this one looks more atypical. Again, it's not a basal layer. Okay, I guess I only did 2 on this one. So for this one, I would favor non-invasive papillary urothelial carcinoma low grade because of these mitotic figures. But, you know, depending on how someone thinks that this is oriented, they could argue about pun lump or papillary urothelial neoplasm of low malignant potential. But remember, pun lump is not allowed to have atypia. It is definitely not allowed to have mitotic figures that are not at the base, whether they're atypical or not. So again, I would favor a non-invasive low grade. K7. So at low power, this looks very similar to our inverted type lesions that we've looked at already, where we have these cord-like areas that are very blue, and then these lighter pink areas in between. And if we go in, that's exactly what we're seeing. Again, the peripheral palisading. Okay. So what are we hunting for in here? Well, we're looking for atypia and disarray, and I think we definitely have that. You can see here, definite pleomorphism. Whereas here we have more of the basal cells, and they're a lot more crowded in those areas. Here we have some cystic areas. The next thing we're looking for is to see, did they give us detrusor? It doesn't look like they did, because this is all blood and serum, even though at low power, you might think maybe that's muscle. So remember, when you don't have detrusor muscle present on a biopsy, although this looks more like a transurethral resection of bladder tumor or TURBT, TURBT, not having the muscle present is something that you need to mention in your line diagnoses, so that they understand that you can't really evaluate those areas of the bladder. So this is definitely urothelial carcinoma arising within urothelial carcinoma with an inverted growth pattern. And even though there's disarray, it's still fairly monotonous. So I figure that this is still low grade. And what we have here, this looks non-invasive, but again, just remembering that we don't have detrusor to go over. So be sure that you mention that. So for my line diagnosis, I would say something like non-invasive urothelial carcinoma, non-invasive papillary urothelial carcinoma, comma, low grade with inverted growth pattern. Next line, detrusor muscle is not present. And if this is your resection, then you would still want to say that there's no detrusor. Number 8. So this one is extremely blue. It doesn't look inverted like we've seen in previous cases. It almost looks blue enough to be a lymph node like we saw earlier. Okay. Oh. And what we're seeing here is definite disarray. Okay. Can't tell which way is up, which way is down. There is pleomorphism. Is there enough? And what I'm looking at is, this is definitely urothelial carcinoma. Trying to decide if that's invasive or not. And trying to also determine if I have enough pleomorphism to go from low grade to high grade. This is hard because a lot of this is crushed and a lot of cautery or crush in that area. This looks more like cautery here. And one of the things that can help you with urothelial neoplasms is that in situ components tend to have a lot of capillaries and vessels right at the base of these nests. And that is a clue that what you're looking at is not invasive. I think it's probably going to be borderline. I don't want to spend too much of everyone's time on this. Everything's well-rounded. Whoops. There we go. More crush. A little bit of necrosis there. We have some neutrophils in that area. See all the vessels here. So again, it's a soft feature that can help you a little bit. This is like falling apart. So there is some high-grade features, so I guess at this point we might as well finish out looking at the other pieces. But it seems to be a very similar pattern throughout. But I would say for this non-invasive urothelial carcinoma, low grade with high grade features. There are some high grade pleomorphism, but I don't know that it's enough. And if this is a snapshot of the entire thing, it might not be enough to go to high grade. But again, totally open to suggestions if someone else feels that this should be moved completely to high grade, or you want to argue against listing high grade features. Please let us know in the comments, because these are great cases for discussion. Case 9. So extremely blue, extremely busy. It's kind of hard to tell what's up and down. There's definitely some blood in here. And this area is a little more pink, so it's kind of catching my eye. So I kind of want to go here right away. And what we see here is that this is squamous differentiation. So you can see that we have really well-defined cell borders. We still have epithelioid type cells. Maybe some keratin formation there. But this is definitely squamous differentiation. It is completely disarrayed. Is this squamous cell carcinoma? And I think no, this is not squamous cell carcinoma. The pattern doesn't quite fit. And then we see this. This is urothelial carcinoma. And urothelial carcinoma, both low grade and high grade, obviously can have differentiation, whether that's squamous, smooth muscle. Remember, you can have things like rhabdoid features, sarcomatoid type features. But when you have the true differentiation into these other cellular morphologies, it's far more common to see in high grade urothelial carcinoma. So we just want to spend a little bit of time looking at our urothelial component. And there's a lot of it on this slide. So again, what are we looking for? We're looking for pleomorphism, more mitotic activity, necrosis. And remember, are we looking at potatoes? Are we looking at gourds? So you guys want to keep that in the back of your mind for pleomorphism. And this is pure urothelial carcinoma over here, and there's a lot of heterogeneity amongst the cells. And this kind of seems to be the similar pattern, regardless of where we're going. So let's just go to a completely different area of the slide and see if it's similar. And it is. So again, you can see like the squamous differentiation to the urothelial cells. Again, urothelial. So this is an invasive high-grade urothelial carcinoma with squamous cell differentiation. Case 10. So again, extremely blue, very hemorrhagic. Can't tell if there's any normal urothelium present. And this is high grade, no doubt about it. We have cords everywhere. Extremely high grade. Not that that is a characteristic that you should use. High grade is high grade is high grade. But I don't think we can make an argument at all that this is not high grade. But all this rhabdoid type change, this is like sarcomatoid type changes. So I'm wondering if everything's going to look more rhabdoid, or if we're going to encounter areas that maybe are a little more spindled. But sarcomatoid type change is not a good sign. And this looks like it's most of it. But again, like these extremely hyperchromatic nuclei, they are somewhat eccentric and eosinophilic cytoplasm. So, okay, I'm not seeing anything that looks a little more spindled. Everything looks a little more rhabdoid. So this is an invasive urothelial carcinoma, high grade with sarcomatoid features. Remember, sarcomatoid portends a poor prognosis than conventional, so it's something you want to keep in mind. And this is a really nice example because you normally don't see this much sarcomatoid type change. Case 11. So extremely blue. And this is a complete cross section. This looks like we have a nice layer of fat. This looks like muscle, and this looks like urothelium over here. So let's take a look at our urothelium. Okay. It's darkly stained, but the urothelium generally looks intact. And then we get to our lesion. So we've lost our urothelium. Okay, so we have some ulceration there. And what we see with our lesion is that everything is jam-packed in here. We have nuclear molding. They're extremely hyperchromatic. We are not seeing nucleoli, so inconspicuous nucleoli, right? They're just not there. And these cells have very little to no cytoplasm. Okay, so that's part of the reason why they are molded on each other, which means that they're impressing on each other and forcing the cells to take different shapes. So kind of like if you had Play-Doh or plasticine and putting those into a smaller area, they just kind of take on the shape of what's around there. Looks like maybe some mitotic figures. Might be easier to see in other areas. Like that's an atypical mitotic figure. We do have some apoptotic bodies, so there is some dirty necrosis. I think I also saw some neutrophils in here. Okay. So what are we looking at here? Well, this is a small cell carcinoma of the bladder. And again, remember, we have to take a look at everything, but this is obviously the lesion. Okay, and even if we go over here, far away from where we were looking, it's exactly the same. This is still small cell carcinoma. And our surface urothelium was completely benign. Small cell carcinoma portends a poor prognosis and needs to be the vast majority of the lesion in order to be called true small cell carcinoma of the bladder. You want to look out for that TERT mutation since that's unique to small cell carcinoma within the bladder. And also note that TP53 mutations are far more common in your small cell carcinoma of the bladder than they are in conventional urothelial carcinoma. You will still see TP53 mutations in urothelial carcinoma, but not quite as often. Case 12, this is our last case. So again, we have, looks like they took out the bladder completely. We have fat over here, maybe some normal urothelium up here. So let's just take a look. Yep, and our urothelium is quite happy. There's no real disarray to it. It's the appropriate thickness. And again, we see these cords more than nests of really hyperchromatic cells with nuclear molding, some apoptotic bodies, lots of apoptotic bodies. I'm certain there's going to be a lot of mitotic activity within here. So this is another example of small cell carcinoma within the bladder. So again, just spend some time looking at these cases, maybe one nucleoli, but one nucleoli in a sea of cells, that's okay. Lots of apoptotic figures up here. And remember the things that we talked about in the previous case, the TERT mutations, TP53 mutations, the poor prognosis, These patients with true small cell carcinoma of the bladder, they're going to get cystectomy or radical cystectomy or cystoprostatectomy. Oh, and some more urothelium. So again, that we can prove that our urothelium is completely benign because, again, you should not have components of both. Can you see this in conjunction with urothelial carcinoma in situ as well as invasive urothelial carcinoma? Of course. But again, it must be the predominant component in order to call it a small cell carcinoma. And with that, this is our answer key. Although when we were going over the cases, we did note a few changes. So spend some time going over these cases. Let me know what you think. If you like this video, please hit like. If you love this video, please hit subscribe and share it on social media. We do have our Twitter links below, so if you have any questions, comments, things you'd like to see, things you'd like us to go over, please do let us know, and we will see you next week with a new slide review.